Pew, 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 pew. Welcome, everybody, to podcast season 2 with Light Diamond Creative. This podcast season is called Dedicated to the Awakening Journey. This is the Awakening Audiobiography by yours truly. And today we are diving into some really special topics. I do want to list off some of the other topics that we've been talking about throughout this series before we dive into today's topics. That way, if you haven't heard what we've been talking about, you can get a little sneak peek into those episodes. And I would encourage anyone to go back to the beginning and listen in chronological order. Some recent episodes, we talked about awakening and alignment. We talked about meditation and dreams, visions and intuition, near-death experiences, the dark night of the soul. We talked about telepathy and powers of the mind. We talked about love and grief and all sorts of amazing topics that are very illuminating and are likely shared across the board for everyone who is going through their own individual, personal awakening journey. And my hopes with this season is to share information that I have accrued, experiences that I've gone through during my own awakening process, so that you out there going through your own may find helpful information, or you may just resonate with what I'm saying and find companionship in this journey that we are going through together. And some of us are in one spot of awakening, others of us are in another. It is a unique journey for each of this. So I hope it's useful to you. I hope you enjoy the content. And here we go, diving in to today's topic, which is food, water, and plastic. I know some of you out there are like, wow, I thought I would be getting something more mystical today. Here's the thing. Well, first off, what is awakening? What does that even mean? Of course, we've talked about it in the previous episodes, but let's recap. From my perspective, the awakening journey is about truth being revealed. The continuous revealing of truth over time about life. Different topics like I've already mentioned. For example, grief. That's an awakening experience, especially if you have not lost someone dear to you before. Some of this other information, awakening, getting the information is the receiving of the truth. And then what will we do with it? What will we do with this information we receive? Will we be in denial? If so, that is not the awakening path. If we choose to confront the truth, align with the truth, then that is a much different experience than denial. And I would even go so far as to say that coming into union with the truth is so life-altering that we end up down a path different than what we could have ever imagined for ourselves, and it is the best possible reality that we can experience in this carnation. So back to food, water, and plastic. I know it's not as mystical as you hoped, but it is, because the information about these subjects is very important for our personal expression, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. If we come to the truth about these topics, then we can begin to embody the truth in such a way where our behaviors shift optimally to assist our own individual health on all of those levels and beyond what I just mentioned. So yes, it is a metaphysical experience. Taking the spiritual information, taking the knowings, taking the downloads, and doing something about it, aligning the information, aligning the awakenings into the 3D so that it becomes grounded and does not just stick in one's head. And there is a difference between knowing and doing. And we know this, but let's just talk about it again. It's one thing to know something and not behave in alignment with it. If one is knowing something and not behaving in alignment with it, this is cognitive dissonance. This is something we talked about in a recent episode. But if someone is receiving information and aligning with it, this is the alignment that is groundbreaking. This is the birth of knowings into the physical. This is the grounded state of the spiritual experience. And so even though we might be like, food, water, plastic, that's not part of the awakening journey. But right now on this planet, yes, it is, because it is more toxic environmentally at this time on Earth than it ever has been. And I know that's not necessarily a truth you want to hear. You can feel free to accept or reject anything that I say, but it is what it is. And so how will we deal with that? What are we going to do about that? Especially if we are seeking a different way of being, that would mean a non-toxic world and a non-toxic self, a non-toxic community. And when I say toxic, I know this is kind of a trigger word for some people. Some people feel that it's overused. I mean it in the literal health sense. I mean it in the sense of our physiology. Not all of these external things, let's say heavy metals, for example, that are in the water, those are not meant to be within the body. It negatively affects the cellular activity and beyond. So what we are talking about today is food and water quality first. We are talking about this booming subject within the biology realm, which is epigenetics, and how the environment affects our internal genetic expression. And what is the most profound way of affecting and changing our genetic expression other than what we directly consume, liquid and food-wise? So here I was as a biologist in Florida in 2019. I had just started meditating in October of the previous year. And I was really exploring the idea of no harm, and I was really beginning to open up to see truths. And let me give you a little cheat code, let's say. If you are seeking the truth, this might sound crazy, but bear with me. Ask out loud when you are on your own in a private space. Ask the external. Ask the cosmos. Ask the divine. Ask God, Goddess, the universe, to reveal to you what the truth is. That is all you have to do. And you will begin to see truths revealed to you before your very eyes and in your very ears. It will become attracted to you. It will reveal itself. All you have to do is ask, and ask out loud. Okay, so there's your cheat code. You want the truth? You can't handle the truth. No, I'm just kidding. You can. You can handle the truth. It's about time we start handling the truth, okay? So here I was in my own personal awakening journey as a biologist down in Florida, and I started to really see truths around me because I had asked in that way that I just shared out loud on my own in my private space. I asked out loud for the truths to be shown to me. And another idea that I was exploring was this concept of no harm, because this is within the Buddhist practice, the meditations that I had been given and really resonated with. So what is no harm? And this is a question, a journey in itself that continues to expand the more time we focus on it. What is no harm? And in regards to food, what I realized is that if I'm thinking about no harm, and this is for me, okay? It's not necessarily for you. I'm not putting my lifestyle on you, okay? But when it comes to food, thinking about the environment, thinking about some of the global issues that we are having, what about the mass produced meat industry? I began to ask myself, am I aligned with no harm if I am consuming mass produced meat? My internal train of thought was something like this. I know enough about how these animals are treated in these systems of manufacturing. I know that they have tight quarters, some of which don't even allow them any movement. I know that it is a pretty harsh life to go through that experience. And from my standpoint, everything is an expression of consciousness, including all of the animals that are non-human, including all of the plants for that matter, including the freaking rocks, the sunshine, all right? It's all points of consciousness experiencing life, an extension of divinity, expressing itself in many forms. And so if I am aligned with no harm, and if I'm just now journeying into this concept of no harm in relation to the mass-produced meat I eat, does that mean I am out of alignment? And for me, the answer was yes. And so what must I do? I must come into alignment. How do I come into alignment? Do not eat mass-produced meat. Okay, I'll experiment with that. And I'm not one anymore that really can be overly harsh on myself. So it kind of took a period of weaning myself off. And I had an extra incentive at the time. Now, this was 2019. Things were different back then. But in 2019, I realized that the antibiotics and the vaccines that were put into meat were affecting the energy of the meat, the energy of the being that would become the meat I would eat. I started to realize that the way in which these animals were slaughtered was so harsh that the fear hormones stimulated with the animal before death remained in the animal as I would consume it. And so I was not only consuming meat that was harming on a mass level, I was consuming fear. And that really turned me off. I was already coming into the idea of mass manipulation, and I thought it would be a good idea. I had an intuitive vibe to disassociate myself from the mass-produced meat industry, because not only the no harm and the fear hormones, but because if someone is afraid, if someone is more fearful, they are easier to manipulate. And so that extra incentive helped to motivate me enough to just drop mass-produced meat. And the way I dropped it was I just wouldn't buy it. I wouldn't buy it at the grocery store. That was my first step. Do not buy mass-produced meat at the grocery store. And so I still would eat meat out when I went out to eat, but I've never been one that has eaten out a lot. And so I wasn't eating meat very much. And then finally, I just lost the taste for it completely. And it felt like time to eliminate it totally out of my diet. Now, there are some nutritional issues that go on here. As a beginner vegetarian, what I didn't know then that I know now is that the nutrients, the amino acids within the meat, this can be a very convenient way of a person getting their daily needs or some of their needs. Because let's say, for example, the cow has been spending all day eating grass and different types of flowers and stuff like that, if it is a pasture cow. And so it's eaten all that. All of that is within the meat, and I eat the meat, then I'm getting an extension of those nutrients from the plants that the animal is eating. What I didn't know until more recently in my food awakening journey is that in order to not be nutritionally deficient as a vegetarian or vegan, we need to eat lots of different types of plants, like that cow who would be out in the field grazing on many different types of plants. We need to get our nutrients from a diverse array of greens, of vegetables, of roots in order to be nutritionally sufficient and to not go downward in our health. So if you are thinking about going in that direction, that tidbit is going to save you a lot of trouble, okay? Diverse greens, diversity in your plants, diversity in your vegetarian, vegan experience, that will go a long way. Just trust me. So along that journey, something that was really important for me in sustaining habits over time was doing it a little slower. So I went to being vegan in increments, not buying the mass-produced meat, not even eating it out. Okay, and then I was still eating cheese. I ate, a lot of cheese still. I hadn't gone non-dairy yet. That's the difference between vegetarianism and veganism, is the dairy itself. Milks, cheese. I've never been a big milk person, but the cheeses, yeah, I liked a good charcuterie board, okay? I was partially addicted to cheese, and a lot of us are because of the chemical response to casomorphine within the cheese. A lot of us are addicted to it. A lot of us are addicted to lots of different types of food, and that's part of the awakening journey too, is that there are so many foods out there within the processed world that contain ingredients which are intentionally put into that food item to keep one addicted and coming back and buying it. It's a harsh truth. I know. It doesn't feel good. It'll be worth it in the long term to know that and to be able to identify that we have addictions to these certain things because of those ingredients that are put in them. And I'm just going to throw out an example. This is not a commercial for Takis, and I would not recommend to somebody going to get Takis, but I was addicted to Takis, okay? And I remember in meditation one time, I was actually leading a class, and I became aware of Takis in my mental body. And I started to salivate while I was leading the class. And I was like, wow. But that was me detoxing from the Takis and the ingredients within them. Okay. And having a almost withdrawal response at the thought of it by salivating. You hear what I'm saying? Okay. So there are lots of steps along the way, and we don't have to be perfect immediately. Something else that helped me be incentivized to not go back to meat is, oh my goodness, friend, the parasites. You're not going to want to hear this, but a lot of us have parasites within us that are largely due to the meats that we consume and also due to the quality of water that we're drinking or lack of pure water that we're drinking, which creates an acidic environment within the liquid blood. So here we are, segueing into awakening surrounding the quality of water. And let me remind you, this is a non-partisan podcast, okay? When we talk about water quality, I feel like we're like, oh, that's such a liberal thing, talking about the environment. But that only happened in the last 50 years where we became programmed to think that taking care of the environment and environmental issues were a liberal thing. It wasn't like that 50 years ago. That is a recent programming in society, and I dare say an intentional one to separate us. So I invite all of us here to shed that programming so we can come into accepting the truth, which is the quality of water matters, whether it's outside of us or inside of us. And the quality of water inside of us is directly related to the quality of water outside of the body. And there are things that we can do to improve the quality of water, both internally and externally. What's the deal with the water? What's wrong with the water? Oh my goodness. Chemicals, heavy metals, pharmaceuticals, and fluoride. I'm not going to totally get into fluoride yet because that is for a later podcast when we talk about the pineal gland detoxification, okay? The pineal gland decalcification, okay? That's going to be the season finale when we talk about that. But what I'm saying is that becoming aware of what is in our water will help us to make adjustments so that we consume water and consume liquids that are beneficial to our health and beneficial to the awakening process instead of detrimental. The pH of water matters. Now, a neutral pH is good. An alkaline pH is even better, mostly because I would venture to guess that a lot of us are in an acidic state, that our blood is in an acidic state. And so if we focus on consuming water that has a pH above 7, then we can begin to recalibrate the water within us, which will eliminate the environment that is conducive to parasites. I feel like I don't really need to go into why you would not want parasites in you. I think it's pretty intuitive that we would not want parasites within us. So here we go. You know, there's parasite cleanses out there, all right, that are available for you to flush this stuff out of your body as you continue to create an alkaline environment through the water and through the foods that we eat. You know, different foods are more acidic or more alkaline than others too. And so as I continued my personal food journey, searching for food and liquid as medicine, an alternative to pharmaceuticals, learning that the different pHs of different types of natural food will help us get us to where we want to be. Okay. And I had seen my blood under a microscope. I had professionals around me who were telling me what means what. And so I saw it for myself, the effects of acidity in the blood on the environment conducive for parasites. I had some, okay, it's no big deal. Once we know the truth, we can do something about it. And I did, and I continue to do so. It is okay. You know, along this food journey, it's not just about the food. Coming into self-acceptance, coming into alignment and radical change, changing lifestyles, changing behaviors to optimize our personal health through natural methods. Food can be medicine. Water can be medicine. And I would venture to guess that most of the diseases that we have would be fixed if we preventatively consumed the foods and water that would optimize our health and not get us to a point of being in disease. All right. Another awakening within the food journey and water journey is that, listen, you're not going to want to hear this, but I'm going to tell you anyways. I was there at my friend's house. She was a teacher for like pre-K, and she brought home jars of baby food that had been approved by the FDA, and a listed ingredient was arsenic. We have got to become more aware of the ingredients in our food. And this is why you will see people who are vegetarian or vegan who are really looking at the ingredients of everything they consume. Because number one, freaking dairy is put in almost everything, and dairy is inflammatory to the body. You can see this. If you see people who are over 30 and consuming dairy, consuming a lot of meat, consuming a lot of alcohol, the standard American diet, you can see that their body is inflamed. This is visibly present in the puffiness of the skin and the body, okay? And no judgment. I'm just saying dairy is inflammatory, especially in the amounts that we are consuming it. And we have evolved over time to be allergic to dairy after a certain time in our life when we no longer need mother's milk. Listen, you get to be over 10, you get to be over 15, you get to be over 20. That is when it kicks in. The body does not like it anymore. Yet, there are things like the queso morphine within it that will keep us addicted, along with the programming around food that says we need it and that is part of our natural diet. It's not. Okay, continuing. Let's talk about synthetic chemicals. Let's talk about pesticides. Let's talk about GMOs. The pesticides are being consumed. Okay, pesticides within the body negatively affect cellular function, DNA replication. They interfere with the natural processes of the body. This stuff is poison. That's why GMOs and not eating GMOs, not eating food that has pesticides on it is so important. And I saw it within my own blood, the effects of GMOs, genetically modified foods, on the blood. It creates a netting. It's more difficult for the blood to flow because there's a netting within the blood, creating barriers to the flow. The synthetic stuff. The synthetics are not good for the body. What is good for the body is what naturally grows. What is good for the body is organic food. What is good for the body is fruits, vegetables, through the seasons, across different areas. You know, we had been roaming for a long time as Homo sapien. We had been roaming as species before, precursors to Homo sapien. And so it is good for the body to experience different seasons, different climates, different foods from those places over time. Getting, again, a diverse array of nutrients through the ingesting of those things. And finally, let's talk about plastic. And that's going to wrap up the episode. And hey, it's all about what will we do with this information. You can go fact check me. You can go look it up yourself. But also the thing about this is that it really is so intuitive. Doesn't it make sense to eat what the earth naturally grows? Doesn't it make sense to eliminate from our diets the things that are synthetic additives, which are addictive and keep us coming back? I'm not saying it's easy. I know it's not. I've gone through the period of leaving it myself, and I had to wean myself off. So I'm not here to judge you, and I'm not here to say that these changes need to be made overnight. I'm saying that Actually, the opposite. Instead of doing it overnight, doing it slower over time might be optimal for you because it would create lasting changes as you continue to learn about what is going on with the food and water around you. And even before we go into plastic, let's talk for just a second about the quality of food and water and the degrading green space. We cannot continue to build and put concrete on all the green space because we need this green space in order to grow food that is nutritionally dense and good for us. We need this green space in order to rejuvenate the soil so that it can even grow stuff in the first place. So anyways, that was a little bit of a sidetrack, but into the plastic thing. And this is a little more extreme. I had a lot of information as a learning biologist when I was in college. And so I had a lot of stuff in my mind already about the use of plastic. I pulled up a couple facts about plastic that I'd like to share with you. And here they are. Are you ready? 25 jaw-dropping facts about plastic. We won't go through all of them, but let's talk about some of these statistics. Here we go. The world produces around 400 million metric tons of plastic waste every year. I can't even comprehend that. 10 million tons of plastic per year end up in the ocean. China is the world's largest plastic producing country with a 32% share of global production. And the U.S. produces more annual plastic waste than any other country. 50 billion plastic water bottles are sold each year in the U.S. On average, just 18% of plastic is collected for recycling. There are currently 5.25 trillion pieces of plastic in our oceans. So why am I talking about food and water and plastic? Because if we keep producing plastic for the sake of convenience, we will begin and continue to eat plastic. Do you think that's good for you? A resounding no, I hope. And it's not just about us, it's about the other animals too. And not just because I care about them because they're a point of consciousness, but because they support our life on Earth as humans, as one of the apex predators of all time. We depend on the species that are not. We depend on the sources of fish. We depend on the sources of other animals that they give us. We depend on them maintaining the levels of plants in the environments too. And so if we are putting that much plastic in the environment, first of all, it's inevitable that we eat it, that we drink it. Second of all, it's inevitable that the other animals eat it and drink it. And also, it is ridiculously lazy to be so reliant on plastic because it's convenient, to be in a pattern of consumption where all those water bottles have a life use of 10 minutes before they get thrown away so the plastic industry can just produce more again. Did you all hear those statistics? How many water bottles per year? 50 billion just in the US. And listen, I understand that it can be difficult to let go of the habits and create new ones that would prevent us from needing to use plastic because plastic is super convenient. But there are alternatives. How about hemp? Hemp can be made into a plastic. Hemp can be made into anything. But hemp has been illegal for X amount of years, and that's maybe part of your own awakening journey to explore the reasons why, okay? There are alternatives, and it is not best always for us to choose convenience over what is right. And it's up to you to determine what is right. But I would ask you to consider the amounts of plastic and the amount of resources towards producing this amount of plastic that could be used for something else. And I would invite all of us to explore alternative habits that would keep us from using plastic, like having a reusable water bottle, like having a grocery bag that we train ourselves to use. And I get it. I had to train myself. It took time. Sometimes I still forget my reusable bag, and then I'm just so stubborn that I'll carry everything out with my hands. Okay? I get it that changing habits can be challenging. Trust me when I say that, because I have had to change myself. It is possible, and some of the benefits along the way are the exercise of forethought itself. If you are not participating in the consumption of plastic, one needs to be much more forward thinking in order to prepare our needs and make plans that would make up for the lack of convenience that plastic offers. All right. Anyways, I know I got on a little bit of a hot seat there. I feel very passionate about it because of my background, and I just care a lot about the state of the environment. And it is so related to the internal environment. This is epigenetics. How do you think it will affect the expression of our internal genetics if we are consuming microplastics from all of those water bottles that are slowly degrading in the ocean over time? You know what I'm saying? We can do better. And alignment is the process of doing better, of changing the habits, of doing those things now that we know the truth. So I invite you to pick a thing, to improve, to change, so that we can create a better world internally and externally. This is episode 15 of the Awakening Audiobiography. Thanks for listening. Feel free to share the video. Feel free to give it a thumbs up, whatever. I'm just glad you're here. Okay. Appreciate it. See you in the next one. Peace.